Coming up, Nate Diaz finds himself in hot water after footage emerges of him choking out a Logan Paul impersonator in the streets of New Orleans. In the UFC, top bantamweight prospects Ricky Simón and Yadong throw down in a much anticipated main event bout. Over at BKFC, Mike Perry and Luke Rockhold prepare to face off in an event that features a co-headliner between Chad Mendes and Eddie Alvarez. It's Frank Bonada here for the MMA stream, joined by Murdo Todd. We're here in, the aftermath of UFC Fight Night Blades versus Pavlovich, before UFC Fight Night Song versus Simón. It's a bit of a dry patch for MMA right now, for combat sports in general, but there's a few things to talk about before we get into them. How are you today, mate?
I'm good, mate. Yeah. I don't know. I like the main event. There's a couple fights I'm interested in on the card, but nothing that really gets me excited, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest fights that's gone down recently wasn't even in the cage. It was in the streets of, God, I don't know, where was it?
I think it was New Orleans.
Yeah. Nate Diaz and a Logan Paul impersonator with an 0-6 amateur MMA record threw down randomly. I think this was like backstage of one of those influencer boxing events. Just ridiculous. Nate Diaz chokes him out, and now they've gone to court about it.
Yeah, it was oh God, what's Nate Diaz's? He used to fight in the UFC. He was boxing on it.
Oh yeah, Chris Avila.
Yeah, Chris Avila, and then they were getting into it, and then someone had, like, that guy who chased Demur, who was like ground and pounding that guy. it seemed to just spill out, and then you can't really see a clear image. Nate Diaz just guillotines him, drops him on his head, which, like, I don't like. You shouldn't assault people. Like, that is one thing.
Especially if you're a professional fighter.
Especially if you're a professional fighter. But this other guy does have, I think, you know who Nate Diaz is. It's not the kind of situation that if I saw Nate Diaz and there was a street fight breaking, I wouldn't go try and calm him down. It's not something I would personally do. But one thing I will say is, I'm surprised something like this hasn't happened a lot sooner, because these influencers and all this other stuff, they're entering the world of fighters. They're entering their world. It's not, and a lot of these guys have a very privileged, because they've had it pretty easy, because I don't know, they get millions for doing well. They don't have a lot of talent, these guys. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
well, they do,
and the way they act is
world of combat sports.
Exactly. Yeah. The way they act is very obnoxious and arrogant. So I'm surprised someone hasn't been like, I'm surprised this hasn't happened before. I don't condone, like, you shouldn't. And if Nate Diaz did feel under threat and he thought he was going to hit him or whatever, fair enough. But you can't really get a clear image of what's going on from the video. But
that's the thing. Like, yeah. So from what we're hearing, Nate and his team are pleading self-defense, essentially. The issue is, in that footage, you can only sort of see the second half of what's gone down, which is Nate holding this guy in a guillotine and choking him out. But because there's a guy standing in the way, you can't really see how they come together in the first place. So yeah, it's a tricky situation. But I don't know. Yeah, what I do find interesting is what we spoke about off camera, where I was initially going into this being like, look, Nate can't do that. He's a professional fighter. End of the day, yes, he is, I don't know, what do you want to say, from the streets. He is that guy, but at the same time, when you are a professional fighter, there is a limit to things. Like, you have a certain responsibility. But then finding out that this guy, because this is what you told me off camera, it is is technically an MMA fighter, an amateur fighter, admittedly with an 0-6 record. But that, I don't know, that does change my perception of it a little bit.
Yeah,
because it's
you understand what fighting is at that point. You understand even a little bit. Do you know what I mean? So there's like, you can't really plead ignorance, I think, a little bit.
It's like, just because they're doing the documentary on it, but like Lee Murray And is that like legendary
goat, absolute goat,
legendary street fight he had with Tito Ortiz, and you're like, oh, well, he knocked him out apparently, but it's not like you're gonna be like, oh yeah, that was assault. It's like, it's basically an MMA fight on the streets,
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, it's a bit different. You know what? Just talking to Lee Murray, I was watching a really random ass fight the other day. Diego Sanchez versus John Hathaway. This is in like 2010, and Hathaway beats him, and at the end he looks into the camera and goes, "Free Lee Murray." It's like, oh, classic MMA. Thing of the time. Yeah. Do you think Diaz should have any punishment, sanctions, anything like that for his actions?
It's hard to say because again, we don't really know the details of the situation exactly, but I don't know. The guy did, like, you can see it from both sides, but I don't think I think Nate Diaz has probably got some pretty good lawyers. I think he'll be fine. I mean, I wish it was some other influencers that it happened to to be honest, but
mate,
I don't know.
Imagine if someone like runs up on like Mike Perry or something like that. Lord,
please. Like, I hope these, like, the ones that live stream and they like just play pranks and all this. One, like,
just
again,
a prank, bro.
Oh mate, I'm surprised they haven't got a slap before. And to be honest, I think it should be a warning. You're not fighters, although you like to like call people out and insult people online, because it's what these guys do. It's how they make their living.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think this is like, people are shocked about this. I'm not, because we understand how violent some fighters can be.
Yeah.
And people want to take this as like, oh, it's entertainment. This is fighting. This is completely different, and all this misfits crap. Like, it will eventually die out, obviously, but it's just like, I don't know. I think it's a bit of a wake up call to people, in my opinion. Like, this is what fighting is, and this is what happens when you want to trash talk, or you want to get involved in things because you want a bit of attention. Like, I don't know. I just think, I don't know. But I think you'll be fine.
And like, pick your fights. I mean, come on. Like, guys that like Diaz, like Perry, obviously you're gonna get that sort of reaction. I mean, like, go do that to, like, I don't know,
Stephen Thompson.
Exactly.
You'd be fine.
Or pick out some like bantamweights or something, like Aljamain Sterling.
I'm gonna do that to Aljamain Sterling when I see him.
Oh, the biggest hater of the Funk Master.
No, I agree. It's like, some of these guys, they're fighting. They're professional fighters for a reason. A lot of them don't have, like, they will slap you. They will give you a proper slap. Do you know what I mean? So,
you know what I just thought? Nate Diaz will probably have less punishment for literally choking a bloke unconscious on the streets than his older brother Nick did for testing positive for marijuana. Because remember, Nick was like out of combat for like, well, it initially was like 7 years or something, wasn't it? It was crazy. I know it got reduced, but yeah, it's a crazy world. Right. Let's get back to some real actual fights. This weekend we have UFC Fight Night, Song versus Simón. Obviously, it was initially scheduled to be the co-main event of last weekend's Apex card. It's a shame because I think that would have made last week's card worth watching. This week it was initially scheduled to be Sayukin versus Moicano. That fell off, so they bumped this card up. Initially scheduled to be 3 rounds, now 5. I mean, if you look at the odds, very closely aligned. Song Yadong is like a forever prospect. He's been around for ages.
Yeah.
He's 25 years old. He's been fighting for 10 years. Trains a team Alpha Male with like Faber and them lot. Yeah, got close to reaching his potential multiple times and then just fallen short multiple times. Ricky Simón, on the other hand, an athletic specimen, someone really hitting his prime right now, on a 4-fight winning streak. Most recently submitted my boy Jack Shaw. that hurt to watch. Sorry, a 5-fight winning streak actually. Prior to that, knocked out by Faber and decisioned by Font. Yeah, it is a good fight. There's no two ways about it. What's your read on it?
I think because it was 3 rounds originally, I think the
Yeah.
5 rounds really does. I think that could play into Simón's hands really. See when you like the Jack Shore fight was just like I rate Jack Shore, and
Yeah.
he just couldn't. I don't know. He just couldn't keep him off him. I really rate Ricky Simón, but obviously you said they train at Yadong trains at Team Alpha Male with Faber. Faber obviously he knocked out Ricky Simón. The
Absolutely
weirdest, like when you
sparked
look
him.
back at it, it was
Yeah.
really weird. But they have experience training for Simón, so that could play into it. I think it is a very high level main event. And I think for people like me and you, that it'll be a pleasure to watch, taking a break from all the other fights on this card. But
Yeah.
if I had to pick Song Yadong, I'll go
Yeah,
Song.
I'm on the Song side, I think. Just like you say, Faber already knocked Simone out once. Song is just, I don't know. I think he's good enough to basically beat anyone outside the top 5, essentially.
Yeah,
Simone is on this great tear, but like those wins, I mean, they're good. Jack Shaw, really good win. Rafael Sunsao on the way out. Brian Kelleher, I mean, he's a good like litmus test for like contender series fighters, but he's not
yeah.
really top of the division. Perello, Rayborg, it's only a split decision win over Rayborg. Like, yeah, I just think Song's level of opposition has been higher. Admittedly, yeah, he's coming off a loss, but a loss to Corey Sandhagen, a top 5 fighter. Prior to that, Marlon Moraes, Julio Arce, Casey Kenny, Tyler Phillips, Marlon Vera, Cody Saman. I mean, like he's been fighting monsters for years. Yeah, I just about pay, but it could be close. It's one of those
Yeah.
where like, yes, the betting lines are close, and there's a reason why. Simone, his wrestling might do it. One of the reasons why I favor Song is because he's at Alpha Male, and there's such good like scramblers there, and
Yeah.
like there's so many wrestlers to train with and whatnot. So yeah, I just about favor Song.
Do you think he can? How do you think he deals with someone's wrestling and the pace of it though? Over because it is over 5 rounds now.
Yeah, but Song's, I mean, his last fight was a 5-rounder with Sandhagen, although it ended at the end of the 4th because of an injury. And he's competed over what 3 rounds competitively with guys like Chito Vera. So yeah, I think he does okay. And like Simone's never gone 5 rounds as far as I know. At least
That's true.
not in the UFC. Yeah, I reckon Song wins via decision. That is my pick for this one.
I like it. I like it. But
um,
yeah,
Go on.
I think it's I was looking forward to it last week, but I'll
Yeah.
stay up a bit later to watch it now. Maybe it's over 5, so we get a bit of a treat with it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're not really going to talk about the rest of the card. Barallo versus Oleksiejczuk might be fun. And Julian Erosa's fighting. I like Erosa.
Yeah.
And then there is not much else to talk about on that card. So yeah, let's move on to some BKFC. I mean, again, this has become like a weekly segment now, but the residential boxing expert, Murdo Todd, talk to me about the BKFC that we have this weekend.
It's actually a great card. Like, and I think BKFC have made a lot of mistakes before. But they do put on when they put on these kind of, I wouldn't even call it a sideshow. It's like it's totally random, but they are really, really fun fights.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed the build up of Rockhold Perry. I think the personalities have just it's just been funny. And then you've also got Mendez versus Alvarez in the co-main. A decent female fight in Ferreira versus Rollins as well. And obviously Big Ben Rothwell's on the card. I think if you think BKFC and bare knuckles too much, I totally understand. But if you like watching this kind of stuff, it will be good. They always push the action on this, so Yeah, I am quietly looking forward to this one. Who do I think in the main event
Yeah,
though?
give us some predictions. Perry, Rockhold, and Alvarez Mendez.
Um, honestly, I feel like Rockhold gets caught, to be honest.
Yeah,
Like Perry, he's had a decent run. I've watched his fights in BKFC. They've been decent. He wins, but with no matter who against, a great deal of difficulty and
yeah.
damage done to him.
He lost
Um,
MVP, in my opinion.
yeah, I mean, it was close though. He
It
did,
was,
he did,
yeah.
he did
It,
drop the MVP, which was impressive because I thought MVP would win, to be fair.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then he went to battle with Julian Lane, who's yeah,
The
whatever.
GOAT. Oh, you know
um,
what? Imagine just thinking, because we're talking about the GOAT. Obviously, Lee Murray comes to mind. He's on the brain right now. But imagine if he got out of prison. Imagine Lee Murray in BKFC would be
that
insane.
would be like that would if he was around, that would be like
Yeah,
this would be totally his thing.
yeah, that would be wild.
It's hard to tell, like it's hard to predict these things because obviously we haven't seen
Rockhold.
Rockhold in bare knuckle or even
Yeah,
box, and it is different to boxing. Like I think boxers come over, and there is certain styles of boxing that work in it,
yeah.
and but like it's not boxing, and I think if you treat it like that, you are in for a very rude awakening. The co-main, man, I think I've seen Juicy Mendez at the weigh-ins and all that kind of stuff. Have you seen him hit the pad recently?
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. Oh, cool main. I'll go with Mendez. I'll go with
Uh,
Mendez.
I think I'm on the Alvarez side of that. He's just
Yeah.
he's a brawler, isn't he? I know he's a bit old and he gets chin checked, but like, man, when he goes to war with like Poirier and Gaethje and stuff, like it just seems like if only well, not if only, because I don't exactly agree with bare knuckle, but just as an outlier, Alvarez in his prime in bare knuckle boxing would have been wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. I do get why people don't like it though. Like it
Yeah.
is it
Well,
is
someone
something for
died.
everyone. That
I
to
mean,
be fair, that's nothing that is to do with BKFC rather than the actual sport of bare knuckle. The matchmaking is like they have good ones. The main event, great.
yeah.
Co-main event, great. Even the women's event, great fight. But you go further down on these cards and
Mm,
they have I remember I saw this 45-year-old on there once against
yeah.
this like 20-something-year-old. And it's like this is how people get injured
Yeah.
and I'm sure they had some commission not sanction one of their events. Recently the Del Rey commission or Florida commission cancelled the event week up. I'm not really sure what that was about, but they've had other commissions question their matchmaking and their roster before. That is just definitely something they need to address, but
Mm.
they have done a decent job promoting the fights. I think they pay pretty well as well. Um, it's difficult because they do a lot of things wrong, but they also do a lot of things pretty well, in my opinion. Still a young promotion, but
Mm.
yeah, I do get it because it can be a lot to watch for some people if you're not into that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I think when you get a good one, they are really really good fun to watch.
Yeah, I am intrigued just for the matchups alone. Like
It
any
is
sport.
intriguing, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
it is.
there were talks of Darren Till facing the winner of the main
Yeah,
event as well,
I mean,
because he's training at the Rotunda now in Liverpool.
is he?
Yeah, I see him on. Yeah, I see him training with this Scottish boxer Aston Brown, and then I've seen him with Liam. He's been doing rounds with Liam Smith and stuff like that
Beth,
in the Rotunda.
uh, Smith versus Eubanks back on as well.
Good.
Rematch.
See Eubank get chinned again.
um, okay, just to wrap things up, I do want to give a quick shout out. Cage Warriors 153 in Dublin, hanging card. I won't go into detail because myself and Cage Warriors welterweight Omram Chaban, we did a preview of it recently. He trains at Team KF, whereas a lot of Team KF fighters on that card, including Takamandu, who I also interviewed. Go check that out. Main event, Reese McKee and Jimmy Wallhead, two former UFC fighters. Wallhead, they're fighting for the welterweight title, a welterweight champion versus interim champion. Banging fight. Wallhead's going to retire at the end of it. McKee's hoping to get another call up to the UFC. Oban Elliott versus James Sheehan, essentially a number one contender fight for welterweight. And Tobias Harila versus Ryan Shelley, which again might be a contender fight for the featherweight division. Brilliant card. It's in the 3 Arena, which is huge for Cage Warriors. It's on the UFC Fight Pass. I would definitely recommend giving that a watch. But yeah, that's all from us for today, I think. Any last words, Murdo?
Free Nate Diaz.
Free Lee Murray. Right. Yeah, that's us. Murdo_Todd on Twitter. Frank Bonada on Twitter. We'll be back on the weekend after the UFC. We out.